So for me, working in an Agile community without an IT background, this is what I've been focusing on: communication and collaboration. The issue, though, so Olaf, the magic in communication and collaboration, the issue has been with managers and executive directors and people who make the decisions in organizations. Yeah, that's really nice, Jenny. We need to get the teams trained in Scrum processes. We need to get the stand-up meetings going and everything else. We'll touch communication and working together later. And, you know, that's just so fluffy anyway. I heard that a lot, even in the beginning when I started attending Agile conferences. Oh, yeah, all that stuff, that's fluffy. And I got frustrated. I thought, you know what? It's not fluffy. I know this works. I know this is the reason all those processes work. So I thought, okay, I need to find proof. So I did the opposite. Started with the magic and went for the proof. Because you know what? For those decision makers in the organization, they needed the proof. They needed that certainty. So I found it in neuroscience. And I'm going to tell you about that. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about change and motivation and how we can help our teams and ourselves become even more agile. So not just doing agile, but being agile. Why do things like having the overview and influence and autonomy and certainty work to make us feel more rewarded at work? What can we do to help ourselves and our teams adapt better to change? And how can we shift to a more agile mindset? Before I get into all of that, I want to do a little sort of lesson in the brain. And I know a lot of you already know this, but I love talking about it, so you're going to hear it. Sorry. There are two regions of the brain that are most critical in the workplace anyway. The prefrontal cortex, which is located, these are your eyes right here. It's the newest area of the brain from an evolutionary standpoint. Daniel Kahneman talks about system 2. The limbic system. This is the oldest part of our brains from a evolutionary perspective. This is where all our old habits are. I'm going to talk more about these regions. The prefrontal cortex doesn't get fully developed until right around 25. Women a little sooner. Guys, sorry, it's like 25. So my advice, don't get married before 25.
Too late.
The bad news is right around 30 years old, it starts to decline again. So, you know, you've got your primo thinking between 25 and 30, at least from the neuroscience perspective. One of the things that I love about the neuroscience is that it proves what psychologists have pretty much known for 50 years. That all of the stuff that motivate us is related to how we think. So if we feel happier, we think better. In the last 10, 12 years, the science has allowed people to be studied under social conditions, so work conditions, testing things in functional magnetic resonance imaging systems, fMRI. And you can see the areas of the brain that light up. So when I talk about the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, the neuroscience shows the areas of the brain that light up, which means oxygen and blood are flowing to those regions. And when that happens, that's when the thinking is happening. So if the limbic system is activated, that means blood and oxygen are going there. So more on the prefrontal cortex. This is the decision-making area of the brain. This is where emotion control happens, rational thought, where we come up with all the good ideas. That happens in the prefrontal cortex. The problem with the prefrontal cortex, though, is that it can only take so much at one time. So if you're sitting here tired and you've learned so much in the last 3 days, it's really hard for your prefrontal cortex, or PFC, to take in anything more. It's like, enough already. I'm overloaded. I can't take anymore. That's really, really a natural process. So remember that when you're doing training, When you're working with your teams, they can only take so much at once. It's hard. We get tired. It takes a lot of energy to think. And this is our prefrontal cortex. The limbic system, on the other hand, is where our long-term memory is, all our old habits. Eve talked about the power of habit today. It informs decision-making for the prefrontal cortex. I was a little disappointed about this part, actually, because I think of myself as this, really intuitive person. And when my gut tells me something, that's like, the universe telling me I need to watch out for this. Or it's a really great thing, I should just go for it. What I found out, though, is that actually it's my limbic system, with all the stored memories, connections, my past experiences, things that I'd read, things that I heard, all kind of buried in my limbic system, coming out through my gut, telling me, hello, this is great, or, whoa, get away from this guy. I didn't know why, but deep in my brain, I knew why. And it sends a signal that sends neurotransmitters out, hormones out to the rest of your body to tell you, watch out. So anyway, gut feeling. It's not really a gut feeling. It is your limbic system recognizing stored patterns. Getting back to the prefrontal cortex here, it is the Goldilocks of the brain. It needs to have everything just right. If you're tired, if you're hungry, if you're thirsty, forget about trying to take anything else in that's new. Forget about trying to try something different. Forget about trying to come up with a good idea. It's not going to happen. When you are under those conditions of stress, your prefrontal cortex doesn't get blood or oxygen. So those areas of the brain are not lighting up. No thinking is happening in that region. It's all in the limbic system. So make sure that when you're working with your teams, or you want to try something new, do something differently, working in an agile way, that all those physical needs are also met, because it's super important to optimal thinking. The limbic system is where the fight, flight, or freeze is. So if I jump down and say, Niket, can I give you some feedback? Yeah. What the neuroscientists have found out is that statement has the same effect in your brain, in your limbic system, as meeting a bear in the woods. Exactly the same. So what can we do? What can we do to minimize this? What can we do to make it better? What happens in the brain, driven by the limbic system, is that stress occurs. So we get stressed out at work, all these new things. Oh, well, now I have to do this way of working. Scrum, Kanban, whatever. It's a change process, whatever the change is. Now I have to do something different. That's a stress for the brain. It takes energy for the prefrontal cortex to think. So it stresses us. This stress performance curve is something that was developed by scientists at Yale University. And what it shows, a lot of fancy names, so you can tell that I actually studied this. Right here with this, let's see if I can do it. This here is where high performance happens. So up here is optimal prefrontal cortex thinking. Down here, we're a little lazy. We're tired, we're bored, distracted, whatever. This here are the hormones that are being released into the brain. So NE is norepinephrine and DA is dopamine. You've probably heard of dopamine. This is the pleasure neurotransmitter. So when we're feeling great, dopamine is being released. Cocaine addicts, it's dopamine that's being released. Not that we have to worry about that here. Dopamine is an incredible neurotransmitter in terms of our thinking and our energy. The problem is when we get to high stress, it makes thinking go down. So we need to find that sweet spot right in the middle in the workplace. Our brains perceive stress as danger. And because we have 5 times more negative connections in the brain, that if there is a trigger in the workplace where you think, no, this is not good for me, I don't want to do this, suddenly, over time, you start perceiving more and more threats around you, because what the brain does is make those negative connections stronger. It changes the shape of the brain. It changes what's happening in the brain. So we need to overcome that. We need to figure out a way to make it where people are feeling okay with the work that they're doing, that they're not more stressed. So what can we do? Most people, the research shows, in today's work environment are over here. They're somewhere between optimal and high stress. So, maybe your team is working really hard to make that delivery date, at the end of this sprint. And you can see, oh, something's going on here. We can't quite get it. And suddenly your sponsor maybe comes in and says to the team, what the heck? We gave you this. You had enough time. You promised it. We need this delivery. It has to happen. You do whatever needs to happen. I want it. Overtime, whatever. The problem with that way of working as a leader, manager, is that it pushes people down into higher stress, which shuts down the prefrontal cortex. There is no oxygen or blood in the prefrontal cortex. It's all limbic system. So we're running away from the bear in the woods. And we're seeing more bears everywhere we look because we're under so much stress. It's hard to see what reality is. So what we need to do as managers, leaders, is to support and encourage, to get them back up. So rather than stress them more, do whatever you can to help them. Hey, I know this is hard. I know we're under this deadline. How can I help you? What can I do? Over here, this is not so much in the workplace, although somebody told me once that they had a team of developers, sorry guys, who were maybe a little lazy. I don't believe that. This is more kind of a if your teenager doesn't want to do his or her homework, they're probably over there. And then they need a little push. They need a push to get up to high performance. So when we're under stress, prefrontal cortex doesn't work. It's just nothing's happening there. It's your limbic system that's saying, danger, danger, I want to get away from this. So because our brains are constantly trying to maximize reward and minimize danger, we're trying to predict what's going to happen all the time. We're constantly doing it. We don't know we're doing it, but we're doing it. Maybe you're going to predict if I'm going to jump down off the stage again. Or maybe we're trying to figure out what's going to happen at the office when we get home on Monday. So we're trying to figure out what's going on. Our brains are really, really good at this. It's because we want to avoid danger. If we try to guess what's going to happen next, we can get away from danger, or we can move toward something that's more pleasurable. And just to show how good our brains are at predicting, I want you to see if you can read this. I couldn't believe that I could actually understand what I was reading. Using the incredible power of the human mind, according to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place. And I know for most of you, English is not your first language, and I'm guessing that you could read this without too much problem. It's because our brains are wired to figure it out. So talking about having the overview in the workplace, for instance, so when we're creating master plans and maybe some stakeholder comes in and says, oh, are you wasting your time on that? We're trying to figure out the overview. We want to give not only our teams, but the entire organization the overview so we know what's going to happen next. There's a lot of value in knowing, because if you don't know, You're constantly wondering. You're trying to figure it out. And just think how much time people waste thinking about a large organization that actually these people are working in. Every 3 months, there's a reorg. And so guess how much work gets done? Not very much. Because they're always wondering, who's my new boss going to be? What new process are they going to put in? What are the new requirements? Everything is changing all the time. There's no overview. And we're wasting a lot of time and focus on that. So what can we do? If you understand that people are on this toward and away continuum, this can help you design your interactions to move people one way or another. So on the threat side, this is, say I'm starting in the middle. I'm new to Agile. I don't really want to do it because, maybe I'm that architect. I think Alberto, you were I don't know where you are, talking about architects who were afraid of transparency. Maybe I'm that architect, and I think, oh, crap. Suddenly everybody's going to see that maybe I'm not as productive as I was. And, oh, no, and now I have to stand up for meetings. I don't like that either. Oh, and then we have this whole arrangement where everybody's equal now. I'm not as smart as the rest of them. And then maybe I drive home. Somebody cuts me off. Further and further into this fear, threat area. My prefrontal cortex is not working at all over here. So as an Agile coach, as a team member, as a leader, we want to push people over here where they're curious and happy and interested. They're open to change and trying something new. We need to help them get there. We need to design our interactions so that they can do that. And this model, I love. Usually I'm not so big on models, but I love this one. So it's a way of thinking about our interactions with people. It's called the SCARF model. It's about how we are motivated from a social standpoint. And the 5 drivers are status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So status is all about where we're at, sort of in the pecking order. And I work in Scandinavia, and everybody is equal in Scandinavia, especially in Denmark. Nobody is better than anyone else. Except that, maybe my neighbor has a bigger car, or maybe my friend can cook better, or maybe you're better at doing Agile than I am, or my boss makes more money than me. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others. And again, it's a survival mechanism, because if we know who is the alpha ape in our tribe, we're going to make sure that we stay clear. It's how we survived for thousands of years. We're trying to figure out where we fit and how we can get away from danger. Certainty, again, certainty, feeling in control, knowing what's going to happen. We are able to calm down our brains and focus if we're not wondering about something that will happen that might hurt us. So we need certainty to feel comfortable. And there's been a lot of talk at the conference, and I am just as guilty, about managers who are like, oh, we can't work with them because they don't understand anything about Agile. They still want this whole waterfall approach. We talk to them about, hey, we're going to work on this stuff, and still they're asking for the 2-year plan. The reason they want the 2-year plan is because they want certainty. So when you're talking to your stakeholders about the way we plan in Agile, it actually increases certainty. We are looking ahead. We've got a master plan, but we're not planning in detail because we know things will change. But the things that are going to happen right away that are prioritized, they're really planned. And not only that, every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 4, hopefully not longer, you're doing a demo. You're showing what's happening. They have a chance to see what's there. They have a chance to influence what's going on. So working in an Agile way actually increases certainty, decreases risk. So when you're talking about that with your stakeholders, make sure that they understand it so that they don't keep asking you for that 2-year plan that never holds anyway. It's an illusion of control. But even that illusion helps calm the brain down. So for them, it doesn't matter. It's that illusion. It calms their brain. So we're constantly looking for certainty. Autonomy, so influence. This is one of the other wonderful things that Agile does. It gives people influence in the work that they're doing. They can choose the tasks. They have influence over how things are done. They understand the vision. They have that. And they can just work, self-organizing teams. It doesn't get more autonomous than that. It's a strong driver in our brains to feel that we have influence. If we don't feel that, we're not motivated. We don't want to work. We don't like being told what to do. Relatedness. This is how close we feel to people. So that connectedness, that friend or foe, our brain again, is it somebody who can hurt me? Or is it someone who can help me? We are constantly trying to figure that out. And the bad news is that when we meet someone for the first time, we tend to think they're the enemy. Because, again, we are hardwired to get away from danger. So anybody new, that could be dangerous. So what can we do in our teams? We need to get that sense of connectedness. Because when we have that sense, people's prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking area of the brain, works better. So all those fun activities that you do with the teams are not a waste of money or a waste of time. They help increase the motivation of the team and increase the thinking. It leads to more innovation in the workplace. The last driver of human social motivation is fairness. And fairness is about, okay, if I offer, Andre, okay, if I offer you, say somebody gave us both 20 euro, and I get to decide how much you get and how much I get. And I offer you 5 out of the 20, I'll keep the 15. Not very fair, right? And it's like, I don't think so. But if it was 10 euro and I offer you 5, right? Thumbs up, that's okay? What the research has shown is that even though the amount of money is exactly the same, if it's an unfair offer, people reject it completely, even if they would still get the 5 euro. But if it's 5 out of 10, yeah, give it to me. That's good. Way to go. I like that. Fairness is an extremely strong driver. This is why when we see the news, maybe even my former place of residence in the US, all the stuff in Ferguson, we think, what the heck? I mean, we need to do something to the police because this is so unfair. Or even worse, murderers or whatever. We want to see them in pain. This is our drive for fairness. This is why people fight to the death, because we believe in something. So fairness is a super strong driver. When you're working in an agile way, we want to try to increase fairness. And how do we do that? That is by being transparent in the work. So when the stakeholders come in with a new #1 priority, priority 0, that's why we say, hey, look, you've seen our backlog. It's not new, it's visible. Where do you want it? And everything else gets shifted down. And that is a perceived fairness for your stakeholder. Because they can see that, hey, if I'm not willing to push everything else down, then maybe, oh, it's okay, we can put it under instead. So fairness is a strong driver. You can't always have everything. So maybe you can have autonomy in the workplace. Not with everything. Maybe there's a little micromanaging that's still happening. You can't get your boss to stop doing it. Then as a coach, as a team member, whatever you can do to help people increase those other drivers. So status, when you're working with managers, for example, what I have seen and what I have read is that in organizations, line managers and up are most affected by status. And this is all the, kissing up that you may have heard of. It's actually a way that triggers reward in our brain. So if I am starting with a manager who might say to me, you know, Jenny, this team is just not working. We need to figure it out. I don't have time for this. This agile stuff, you know, you just go do it. I don't care. I'm thinking to myself, okay. They need to be pumped up a little so they'll be involved and engaged in this process. I usually start by saying, and I'm not inauthentic, I try to find something good and hook onto it. Hey, you know, it's really great that you want to do this for the team. It takes a pretty courageous leader to do that. And immediately the status is up, where this manager is suddenly more interested and open and curious about what all this agile stuff is anyway. So we need to do what we can to increase the motivation, the openness, the thinking. If we drive people toward this happy place, the sun shining, using these motivators, they are more open and interested and curious about the work that we're doing. And maybe we can do more of it instead of less of it. We don't want to drive them over to this place where agile is not for me. I love waterfall. So how do we do this? Trust is a big part of this. But for those managers, it's really hard to trust because, hey, maybe we haven't done this before, or maybe the team hasn't delivered like they promised, or whatever. They're afraid, they're fearful, they're over here. So we need to help them. We need to help them. So David Marquet is one of my favorite people. Turn the Ship Around, if you haven't read it, I highly, highly recommend it. It's a great story. But David talks about trust. We need two things in order to give people decision-making control as a leader. And those two things are competence and clarity. So if we are clear about what it is we need to do, sort of the direction that we're all going together, hopefully. And if we have the competence in the team to do it, then trust can happen. But we need those things. It just doesn't happen by itself. Competence and clarity. So as coaches, as team members, as leaders, help your fellow people get the competence they need. Make sure you have the clarity. Find out if you don't know. You have to know what direction you're going. And you can help your leaders figure it out if they haven't done it already. So competence and clarity can help increase the trust and autonomy in the workplace. So if all this stuff is so cool, you know, the whole motivation, we're driving people over here, we're understanding that, hey, our brains are motivated by status and certainty and autonomy, relatedness, fairness. We're doing all we can to get people there, working in an agile way. They have influence, control over the work that they're doing. They understand. We're planning together. There's connectedness. Demonstrating results, that's a reward. Hey, we're doing this great thing. And we have time to reflect and learn and improve. That's also part of what motivates us, gives us reward in the brain. If all of that is so great, why is it so hard to get some people to change? People have a natural resistance to change. And the second is they don't know why they should do it. What's in it for me? Why should I do this? I don't want to do this. So we need to talk to the two areas of our brain around change. Understand from a very rational perspective, okay, why does this make sense? Why does this change make sense? So this is typically what we are all really good at. We can point to all the studies that show, hey, you know, increase in productivity. I haven't seen the 200 and 600% ones in terms of working agile. So we can point to things from a rational perspective. That we get better quality in the product that we're delivering. People are, in general, happier with the work, make more money, reduce time to market, increase transparency, all of the great benefits. Okay, that's great. That's really good. But tell me why my limbic system should do it. Why, deep inside me, do I want to change that habit? This is where you need to talk to the emotional side, so that inside you feel it. It's not thinking about it. It is feeling it. Hey, awesome. This is so cool. I love this. I remember the first time that I did master planning, and we did the planning game, and I had all this stuff. I was fresh, new to Agile. Had it all over this big table, all these cards, one, blah, 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 all over, and I thought, what a mess. Oh, this is horrible. I can't stand this. I want to go back to my office and just put it into, a nice document where I get to write it and everything's nice and neat and I feel in control. All of this was a disaster for me, I felt. But I thought, okay, I'm trusting the people here. They're super clever. I'm learning. I'll give it a chance. I don't like it. It feels really uncomfortable. But I'm going to do it anyway. And I think it took twice. The plan was so fantastic. And everybody owned it. It wasn't just my little thing where I was like, oh, here you go. Here's the plan. Now we can work it. Nobody cared about my plan. But when we had this big mess, wow, it was awesome. It was awesome. So that is an example of speaking to the emotional side of us, where people feel connected and happy and have had influence in this process. And that's what we do when we work in an Agile way. So what do we do to keep people thinking through change? We know that we want our prefrontal cortices to be working, to be thinking, getting those great ideas. What can we do to help people think through change? This drives me crazy. I hear this so much. Oh, we need to create a burning platform, and then people will be willing to do something different. Yeah. Burning platforms are about short, specific action. So literally jumping off the platform into the water, because the alternative is, fry. It's not so much thinking. It's only the limbic system saying, oh, here's your one chance to survive. Go for it. This is not how we want people to go through change in the workplace. We want people who are thinking and open and curious, who can help us figure out the right way to go. What makes sense for us? And you can do this in a positive way. There's a lot of research around positive psychology. Neuroscience has shown that by involving and engaging people in the change process, so where they have some influence, they can contribute, maybe in the end they don't agree with it 100%, but they've been involved in the process, they won't say no to it. They'll be like, okay, don't agree with everything, but for the most part, it's pretty good. Yeah, I had a say in that. They didn't listen to it, but I had a chance to be part of that. So they're more open, more willing to try something. And they don't put the brakes on and say, oh, this is not for me. Somebody else came up with this change process, and now I'm supposed to do that? No way, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So involving and engaging people, the way we do in Agile, is the way to create change, to make it work. So one of the other things I get a lot, how am I for time? One of the other things I get a lot from managers, Jenni, this whole Agile mindset stuff, we really need that. Our teams, they don't have an Agile mindset. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, now I need to get that magic pill where I just slip it in their orange juice and they've got the Agile mindset. And inside, I'm thinking, it's not the problem with the teams. It's the problem with you. You need the Agile mindset. But of course, I'm remembering the whole status thing, and I'm saying instead, how can we help them? This is really great that you're interested in this. And as a leader, you play a critical role in making this happen. So now I've begun shifting their mindsets. And this is really, really critical, I think, in making successful agile change. Is not just the team, because you know what? The team is really smart. They get it. They get the benefits of working in this way. Not every team, but from what I've seen, for the most part, once people start working either Scrum or Kanban, they get that reward. They see that this works. It feels better than the old way of working. It's management. It's the business side that don't get it. So we need to help them change their mindsets. So how do we do that? This is the how-to. It's super simple. I've seen different versions of it, even at this conference. So the how-to on a mindset shift is the same as changing any other behavior. How do we do that? We make a decision to try to do one thing differently. Not everything, one thing. So the same way that we break down epics, for instance, in Agile, the same process works in change. We pick one thing and do it differently. And then maybe we get some good feedback on it. So we feel good about it. It's that emotion inside. And then we repeat and repeat and repeat. This is why all the diet books and things are like, change your life in 21 days. Somehow 21 days became this magic number where you would get a new habit. Doesn't quite work that way. It depends on what the action is. So I have, run pretty much on and off my whole life. And I hated it all the time until about, a year ago. And I love experiments, so I decided, you know what, I need to drink my own champagne around this whole, let's see if I can shift my own mindset about running. So I made the decision I was going to shift my mindset about running. I was no longer going to hate it. So when I was running, I'd be like, okay, this hurts. I don't like it. I get sweaty. Instead, I started reprogramming, rewiring my brain, making the positive connection stronger by saying, oh, you know what? I have legs. Aren't I lucky? I have muscles. That means I'm getting in better shape. I'm sweating. That means, well, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm still telling myself, I hate the sweat part. That means my endocrine system is working really well. And for me, I don't have sort of the big endorphin rush, but I do feel better than when I'm not running. And I can tell you now I'm training for a half marathon. I have run one before when I still hated running, but now I actually look forward to going for those runs. We had a really hot summer in Denmark this year, and then I went to the US where it was even hotter, and I had all these long runs. And I understood at that point that it's not the running that I hate now, I just hate the sweating. So I'm working on that part. But now the weather is great, so I've been loving running in Krakow.
So you should sweat more.
Sweat more? So that's the how-to. How can we affect a mindset shift to create lasting change? What can we do as leaders? We need to clear the path and create a safe environment, because it doesn't matter what process you put in. If this doesn't happen, it's not going to happen. It's like if you're on a diet, all the diet doctors say, don't buy chips. Stop buying Coca-Cola. Don't have it in your house. Create an environment where success can happen. So clear the path and create a safe environment. You need to provide clarity and give influence. So people have the overview. They know where they're going. There's no questions about the vision. We know. We have clarity and we have influence. The overview is there. Supporting and encouraging. This is maybe the hardest, I think, for managers. It's hard to find time, and for some, it's like, oh, that touchy-feely stuff, oh, I don't want to do that. But you can do it in a way that's authentic. So the support might just be, hey, bringing in a pizza or a salad. Support and encourage. Do whatever you can. Jump in. Help the team. I know you're all doing this. Maybe encourage your managers to help the team. Encourage them to support and encourage. And then be patient. It took me a year with my whole running rewiring. Some things take a lot longer. Some things take a lot less. It depends on our own sort of individual preference for change. So be patient. It takes time to rewire the brain. It takes time. It takes time. When all of this happens, all these new behaviors become embedded deep in the brain and working in an agile way. So understanding together, planning together, demonstrating results frequently, getting feedback, reflecting to learn and improve, become a natural thing for us and our teams. It's natural. And when that happens, that's when we are agile. Thank you.